Thank you. So welcome to day 3 of the app design series. My name is Nathan Diesel. There's a shadow being cast on there. I guess that's okay. And I'll be talking about copywriting for app design. If you think I'm interesting, you can follow me at Nate Dies on the bottom there. I don't know if you can see that. I was anticipating this being a lot higher. And I have to hold the microphone. Like Andy said, if you tweet, use the hashtag ADS2016. Who here has heard the story of Patron X? Raise your hand. One person, good, because I'm going to tell you the story of Patron X, and I'm glad that none of you have heard it. You, my friend, are going to be Patron X. Imagine that you, after a long day at work on a Tuesday evening, much like tonight, have attended the symphony. You are attending Mahler's 9th Symphony, and the performance is almost over. The orchestra is playing what The Guardian describes as a cataclysmically slow movement, the most famously death-haunted place in orchestral music, a moment where the music slowly, achingly bridges the existential gap between sound and silence, presence and absence, life and death. I'm looking at you, Patron X. And then that. That went on for minutes until the conductor stopped the orchestra and turned to the front row and instructed the patrons to silence their cell phones. You can hold it, doesn't matter. Which brings us to the topic of microcopy. What? What does that have to do with any of this? It's what Gene Crawford of Unmatched Style describes as the small bits of text or copy that help instruct and alleviate the concerns of your users. Patron X, the guilty offender for that night's performance, had silenced his cell phone. And when he did that, he saw this display, ringer silent. He was unaware that he had an alarm set and that the alarm would sound. Oh, there it is again, right? Let's turn it off. Cancel, close, done. So wouldn't it be nice if Apple added a little bit of microcopy that read, "You have an alarm set for 9 p.m. Okay, well, who the hell am I to be talking about this? In case you came in late, my name is Nathan Diesel, and I've spent the past few years designing products, proofs of concept, and prototypes for companies such as Kaiser Permanente, Samsung, AIG, and most recently, Visa. And I'm routinely surprised that I find many apps are written by developers in a tone or a voice that speaks to other developers, instead of written by UX designers and professionals who speak to users and who've worked hard to create the personas that represent them. And I'm going to share with you some authorities on the topic, such as 37 Signals, which is now known as Basecamp. Who here has heard of Basecamp? Quite a few of you, right? They have an essay titled, this is their book, Getting Real, and they have an essay in it titled, Copywriting is Interface Design. To quote, when you're writing your interface, always put yourself in the shoes of the person who's reading your interface. What do they need to know? And how can you explain it succinctly and clearly? I'm here to answer those questions by explaining the importance of voice, using a voice that represents your brand and that speaks to your users. Tone, selecting a tone that communicates clearly. And 3, following an editorial style for consistency so that you avoid the embarrassment that Patron X suffered. To start, let's look at some examples that need improvement. What's going on here? This is an example from Apple. Are you sure you don't want to upgrade to iCloud Drive? And my options are to continue or cancel. Anyone want to comment on this? It's confusing, right? What happens if I continue? What happens if I cancel? What about this example? This is from Samsung. This is kind of hard to see because of the bright light, but it reads 50 seeds maximum, limit of 50 seeds reached, seed not added. Okay. Anyone have any comments on this? What is a seed, right? It sounds like jargon. I don't know what it is. And what else is wrong with this? There's only one option. Okay, I have to agree to something that I can't do, and I kind of hate that, all right? What's wrong with this message? This is from an eye verification software that scans your eyes. Inus. What the fuck is Inus? Alibaba just bought these people, by the way. So my point is, these are billion-dollar companies making products that we know and love, and people are on staff writing shitty copy. Okay, well, this is where microcopy gets real, to quote Getting Real Again. Do you label a button submit, save, update, new, or create? How do you know what the label should be? And that's exactly the problem I encountered at Visa, where I currently am, when I was designing a touchscreen tabletop interface. I had a button, and I didn't know if it should be labeled done, or close, or finish, or exit, or just X, or if I even needed a button at all. In the case of this tabletop interface, this is how I solved the problem. I actually didn't refer to a style guide. I created a user flow. So this is more an exercise in, designing a user flow to figure out what are the scenarios that the user would run into. There's actually quite a few problems that could go wrong during their use of this tabletop interface. But I concluded that close actually served all of them well. And this is a screenshot from this donation table at the end. The issue is sometimes when you're done with something, you don't know if you're done, if the system is going to expire on its own or close out, or do you have to take action? So I decided, yes, the user needed to take action and they needed a button to close. But here I'm actually also to talk about these 3 points: voice, tone, and style. Voice. Who here can define voice? This is kind of tricky. Like, what is voice? Anyone want to wager what a voice is? It's an identity. Say that. Who said that? A voice from around the corner. Anyone else have a description of what voice is? Say it again. Positioning. Okay. Anyone else? An attitude. I'm going to come back to that. I'm not going to call that a voice. I'm going to call that something else. One more. Anyone else? It's all the qualities that makes you you in your writing. And what are those qualities? Your personality. So in building a brand voice, Larson Design gives us an example. You pick 3 words that describe who you are, or what you are, what your company is, and then 3 words that are the opposite, that you are not. So bold, but not arrogant. Irreverent, but not offensive. Loud, but not obnoxious. Let's look at a few examples of some really good voice. Who is this? The name is not up here, but you probably already know who this is. Say it again. Virgin. Virgin. And why can you recognize this? Colors, all right? Color is part of their identity. It's not their voice, but look at how they wrote this copy right here. So they take some liberty in how they describe their sleek black leather seats. Here's another example. Anyone want to tell me what's unique about this voice from Birchbox? Yeah, what? Not really what? It's not unique. Okay, it may not be very strong, but they definitely have a voice. Sometimes a voice is quiet, sometimes it's reserved. It doesn't mean that it's not a good voice. It's a voice for their brand. But let me point out a few things. Surprise and delight guaranteed. That's kind of cute, right? Brighten up your inbox, not subscribe, right? And one more thing that I noticed. What about this button label? It doesn't say learn more. It doesn't say subscribe. It says gift now. That's unique, right? And grammatically incorrect. So they are taking liberties with how they write. All right? I hope that's written in their style guide, which I'll get to in a minute. What about this voice? It's direct. What else? Strong. You can taste it. Yeah, so we recognize this because they're using really large, bold typography, number one. But let's look at some other things that they include on their homepage. They include their brand values right up in the menu. Nutrition and food with integrity, right? Those are actual menu options. Okay, tone. Who can define tone? They are qualities that modify your voice, but someone used the word that I prefer earlier, attitude. Attitude in context. So it's about how you communicate to the user in a specific situation. So are you quirky? Are you excited? Are you direct, friendly? Are you sorry? Do you speak with authority or gratitude or casually or not at all? Always remember to keep it simple. Your tone most often should be plain and direct. But sometimes you want to be cheeky or cheerful or use a play on words. An example is to avoid the use of the word please. Who can tell me why? It's often unnecessary. And it can come across as insincere if overused. Microsoft actually has written this in their style guide: avoid the word please except in situations in which the user is asked to do something inconvenient or the software is to blame for the situation. For tone, let's look at this example from AT&T. This is kind of hard to see, but this says my AT&T. Something's not right. Looks like you're not connected to the internet. Please check your connection and try again. Anyone want to describe that tone? Yeah, casual and friendly. Here's another one from Google. They're really good at using, oops, the system encountered a problem, retrying, and they give me an option to retry now or to learn more. I can take action on this. There's also a little prompt down here, trying to reconnect. So although this is a casual and friendly tone as well, I also have some problems with it. Number one, I don't want to hear about your system. I don't use a system, I use Gmail, which is a service. And I don't want to see the code. So to quote, oh, I'm not there yet, anyway. Yeah, style. Who can define style? Consistent system of words, phrases, punctuation, all of that, grammar.
And the look and feel too, right?
It also encompasses look and feel, but I'm not going to dwell on that today. I'm going to call that your editorial guide. Those of you who are writers, raise your hand if you're a writer. Come on, more of you are writers, come on. Yes, all right. Well, a few of you might be familiar with some common style guides like the Associated Press Style Book or the Chicago Manual of Style. But did you know that Google also has a material design style with an actual writing guide in it. Who here already knows about the Google Material Writing Guide? Oh, good. That's actually, I'm really excited to hear that because it's my favorite guide for copywriting, for app design, and that's what I'm going to refer to. It also includes a list of words to avoid, preferred words to use, and a list of words to avoid. You should always avoid jargon, like seed or device. This is a personal rant. Give me 30 seconds. I'm going to tell you why I hate this word. I hate the word device because it sounds divisive, spiteful, or evil, like a vice. But more than that, I don't use a device. I use a phone. I wear a watch. I draw on a tablet. And the interesting things about these devices is that they are smart enough to know what they are, and you can use that information to communicate that to the user. So I'm okay with the word device backstage when I'm talking to my colleagues about the devices that we want to activate or the cross-platform, whatever we're going to do. But I don't want to use the word device to the user. I want to tell them to check their phone, look at their watch, see the notification on their tablet. Another example is avoid exclamation points. To quote Google, exclamation points should be avoided as they could come across as shouting, except in rare situations when you want to shout. Another word that should be removed from interface design completely is the word failed. It should be placed in your style guide on a list of forbidden words. Unless you are literally testing me and grading my results, I do not fail when using an app. So it's hard to see what this interface is, but this is from a game called Abyssrium. Anyone played with Abyssrium? No one? Oh, I'm heartbroken. You have? Yes!
Just kidding.
Oh! Abyssrium is an underwater aquarium where you collect fish and build coral reefs and everything like that. So it's telling me every time I start the app, it's telling me that I have failed to log into the game center. This is a vestige from days when developers demanded that users read the fucking manual. Except we don't read the fucking manual anymore. To quote Nielsen Norman, it's better if a system can be used without documentation. And another bit of advice is that error messages should be expressed in plain language with no codes, precisely indicate the problem, and constructively suggest a solution. Not happening here. Why does this beautiful game about building a colorful new world keep telling me that I failed to log in? Compared to this game, which you can't see at all, I'm sorry. This is a screenshot from SimCity, which I play all the time. Anyone build cities in SimCity? I am the only, okay, thank you. Thank you. It uses plain language without accusing me of anything. Hello, Mayor. Okay, it used an exclamation point. I'll forgive it. You need to be online to compete with other players. Please check your connection. Thank you. It's constructive. It's not blaming me. It's using a casual and friendly tone. The best editorial style that I refer to on a regular basis is Material Design Style Guide from Google. It's short and sweet. It's not like a tome like Chicago. And it gives great examples on 4 main topics. You probably are going to have trouble seeing this, but it's language, tone, capitalization and punctuation, and global writing. I'm not going to get into global writing, but that's when you want to localize something or translate it into another language. And you generally need to allow for an expansion of up to 30% in the number of words. What's unique about this is the top of the page when you visit, and it immediately indicates what their style guide is. So they're referring to the Associated Press or AP style guidelines. Okay, some of you are asking, who has time for all of this, right? If you are under pressure to design and produce quickly, you probably end up designing for yourself or your CEO, except for one thing, you and them are not your users, right? And the other thing is, some of you are asking, why now? I'll get to it. I'm just trying to get out the MVP. We'll come back to this later. Well, then it really is just a matter of priorities. But how often, I challenge you to ask yourself, how often do you go through your backlog and add those changes to the copy? It wasn't until I arrived at Samsung when I was working on a music app that they were launching to compete against Spotify and Pandora that I analyzed their messaging. I took all of the strings from the app and dumped it into this fun little thing called a Wordle. And we can see the relative frequency of the words that are used. So we get that, yes, it's all about stations. They care about stations. So if you minimize some of that noise, I suggested that they actually minimize a lot of these negative messages. There's still a lot of negative messages. This is where I learned to hate the word device. Unable. Don't ever tell me that you are unable to do something. Tell me what you can do and tell me what I can do. And to emphasize the positive ones. So a lot of these little words I associate with a positive experience, but there were so few of them and so rarely used. This big premium I included because it was positive for the business. They were trying to upsell to the user to the premium service. And it wasn't until I showed this to them and discussed the importance of how they write that they were like, oh, you're right. And they started adding copy changes to the backlog. So the good news is, I'll tell you, people do pay attention. I complain a lot to companies that offer digital services, like Munchery. I complained to them that I had a bad experience. I was with a friend. We were deciding what we were going to have for dinner. And after spending about 10 minutes of loading up our shopping cart with items that we would like to eat, I realized, oh, I'm at my friend's house and I need to change my delivery address. Well, guess what happened when I changed my delivery address without reading? Some items became unavailable, number one, and number two, the order that I had started was cleared. Okay, that drove me crazy, right? I was livid. So I immediately got on their customer support link, wherever in the app, and wrote them a nasty email saying, what the fuck? And I got this reply. It certainly would be a frustrating experience to have one's cart cleared, as I've experienced as well. Okay, they're relating to me, I like that. And we will be working hard to make this more clear. Wow, okay, they also gave me a little credit as a small token of apology. If you complain, you usually get something free out of it. And about a month later, I was in the exact same position where I needed to change my delivery address when this popped up, right? Thank you, Munchery, for listening and for implementing a change. Right? Anyone want to tell me about the voice or the tone or the style about this message? Polite. Direct. Okay. What? Not assuming. Yeah, so you know what? I hate that as well. Like, just tell me you're going to clear my cart, right? Yeah. Did you want to add?
Yeah, didn't they fix the wrong thing? Why don't they just make it not clear your damn cart?
Well, there you are. So then there are other priorities, competing priorities that I'm not aware of. But at least they listened and they replied, all right? I felt like, okay, someone's paying attention. Let's look at this example from Medium. We love Medium. Who here loves Medium? Yes, we love Medium. This is a really great login screen, and I'll tell you why. I don't actually have to sign in or sign up with email. I can just do it directly from Twitter or Facebook or Google, right? Although there is the option to do that. There's a lot of contextual microcopy around this. It's giving me their position to connect with voices and perspectives that matter. It's giving me a lot of other information that I probably don't need to read or care about, but it's down there in case I do care about it. But what is one thing that drives me crazy about this?
It's too small.
Oh, okay, it's too small. What's too small?
The type.
The type is kind of small. All right, I'll give you that.
The way that it like flows all the way to the right, and like it doesn't. It's a lot of text is scanned.
It's a lot, so it's a long line of text, you're right. So we want to try and shorten the lines of text for easy scannability and to read easier. But there's actually an issue with the microcopy here that I find offensive. Can anyone tell me what it is? Oh, right, they're repeating themselves. They could just say continue with Twitter, Facebook, Google. That's a really good point. Anything else? That's not the one that drives me crazy.
Well, and it says we won't post anything without asking for the Twitter and Facebook.
Oh, what the fuck? Does that mean if I sign in with Google, everything I do on Medium is going to show up on Google? Right? I'm not okay with that. Like, tell me, if you're automatically cross-posting, say, oh, and by the way, everything you do is going to be posted on Google. Right? Like, I don't understand why these two get the little caveat, which is useful microcopy. Thank you for not posting without my permission. What's going on here? Time? Got it. Oh, we have a question. What's the question?
Sorry, is that?
It is. There are, yes, it's kind of, it's redundant. It's redundant. And sometimes redundancy is annoying in the case of the person over here who said that, thank you. But sometimes it's actually helpful because the user has more than one option to take action.
But don't you think they should make it say sign in with Twitter, sign in with Facebook, sign in with like?
Right, their choice of words could also be changed.
Well,
Instead of
because
continue, it could say sign in.
on the top it says sign in, but it's on a button. So
Right.
Something is not resolved. The information hierarchy is wrong.
Okay. So thank you. I mean, this could actually be improved in more than one way. Did you want to add something? Yeah. Did you hear what she said? She thought that the use of the word continue makes it more casual rather than a direct sign in. Yeah.
Sometimes also they either sign up or sign in.
It's a segue if you don't have an account. So if you don't already have an account, then maybe this is a step, an intermediary step. Is that what you're trying to say?
Like, let's say I want to sign in, but I actually don't have an account. It will go to the sign up page.
Got it. So we don't know where, I don't actually know what the interaction flow is with this. So, but I was offended that Google was missing some information there. Okay, wouldn't the world be a better place if Chelsea Handler ran for president? No, that's not the question here. Wouldn't it be a better place if new users knew how to complete a task or a goal? Before I end, let's look at this example from Snapchat. My goal as a novice user of Snapchat, I have to admit, I'm probably not their demographic, but I watch Chelsea on Netflix, and at the end of every show, she lists her Snapchat username. And I thought, oh, what a great opportunity for me to use Snapchat and follow Chelsea. Like, this is great. So, but how the fuck do I add her? Like, I don't use Snapchat a lot, so I don't actually know how to do this. So is it under, you can't really see, but I'm looking down at the bottom chat icon. There's a chat icon down there. But if I do that, I get the chat window, which, oh my God, I'm super excited because there's a quick add and all these add buttons and there's a search bar at the top. And I'm like, yes, I have arrived. I can find Chelsea, except not. These are not people that I can follow. These are people that I already know who I want to chat with. Damn, all right. Okay, well, is it down in this like button called stories? Like, I don't know what's going on in stories. Like Chelsea's telling me stories. Not there either. What is this thing up here? You can't really tell. I'm looking at that little ghost. Well, it turns out the ghost is where you add new people to follow, people you don't know. And it took me forever, and I didn't realize it, and I did a search on Google, and I was like, how the fuck do you do this? Well, what if they just added the word add? Like, they labeled chat, they labeled stories. I guess their ghost icon is like too precious to add the word add to, right? To quote Joshua Porter of the blog Bocardo.com, in the battle of clarity between icons and labels, labels always win. All right. To summarize, there are 3 pillars to copywriting for app design, and they are voice, tone, and style. Can someone tell me what is the definition of voice? Personality. What is the definition of tone? Attitude in context. And what is the definition of style? Consistency. It's editorial style, editorial guide. Sorry, editorial guide. Thank you. Any questions? How can we get more designers to care about copywriting and practicing here? That's a really good question. Well, I'm in this business because I like to complain. So I have opinions. So you have to have an opinion. And you have to want to empathize with your user, right? So in order to get to care about copywriting, you have to care about how you talk to people. And if you don't already care about how you talk to people, then you're not going to care about copywriting. We had a 10-minute debate over copy, actually, at work last week, because one of my colleagues is not an English native speaker, and he wrote a really wordy and long-winded phrase to describe something. And I was like, no. And he said, well, I wrote it this way so that I could provoke you. So in order to care about copywriting, maybe I'm gonna use a lifeline and ask any of you, why would you care about copywriting? Can anyone tell me why? Yeah, without your words, your app or website doesn't mean much. And that was the point of 37 Signals' book, Getting Real, when they wrote an essay on copywriting is interface design. It's not just your icons or your buttons or your information hierarchy, but it's also the words that you choose. Anyone else want to tell me why they would care? Right, so it's all about experience, and what you read is going to affect your experience. And realize that we are in a new era of software development. Software development, which had started in the 60s and 70s, is very different now. Like, we all carry computers with us every day. So the way we interact with them is very different than what a generation before us had thought about that. Any other questions? Yes, sir. Ah, cool. I didn't know about that. Type as interface. Well, so his question is, how can you write for speed? How can you write the shortest possible copy so that it's practical? And that just takes practice. And if you've ever written for a news article, or if you've ever studied publication design, you know that newspapers have very narrow columns with very short line lengths. And you can take a cue from that. So if you want to write for speed, you write very short lines. And that's already happening in app design. We write fragments or phrases to describe what needs to happen. We try and make it as direct as possible. So we start with the action. What is the action that you want the user to take? And then follow it with what is the goal or the benefit they will receive from it. I actually realized with that question that you just asked, I realized I glossed over a part of my presentation that I wanted to touch on, which is, how do you know what your audience or your user how they want to speak? And the answer is you actually have to talk to them. So you actually have to call them in for an interview. So who here does user interviews? Raise your hand, right? So you need to do user interviews and listen to how they talk to you. And you need to record it, and you need to transcribe it, and you need to pay attention to it. And then you need to follow your users. You need to pay attention to their customer service reports that they make, like me, when they write in and complain and say, what the fuck? And yeah. and if you're in an opportunity to follow them on social media, you pay attention to how they write. And these are all mental cues that you build up to know who your persona or who your user is.
Okay, this is fine. I can dodge it, and I will still go ahead.
Right. Okay, so her question is, well, you heard it. Well, in a practical sense, the most practical way to gauge whether or not you have a problem is if you have an unusual amount of customer complaints about a particular feature. If they can't follow through with an action, if they can't complete a task, and they're logging this in your customer support logs, because the more time and effort and money you spend on that, the more expensive that problem is. But in the case of my complaint around why the ghost icon doesn't have the word ad, you're very right. Like, who cares, right? No one probably cares because people use it so much and they eventually figure it out. I think it really just comes down to time and money. If you're losing users or you're losing time with them, or your priorities, exactly. Does anyone else have another recommendation about that? I do. Well, it's called user testing. I am not an expert on A/B testing, so I'm not going to tell you about how to conduct that rigorously or all the case studies around why a blue button works better than a red button. But yes, I think what I am most comfortable with is user testing. And so, yes, it is perfectly legitimate to write copy in one way and then write it in another way and put it in front of 5 people and see how they react to it. 5 people who represent your users. So anyone else? Yeah. Exactly. So his question is, how do you balance brevity with your voice or your tone? And I think that goes back to what the other gentleman was saying earlier about, what is your goal for your writing? Your goal might be for brevity. And if you want, then you need to be a poet, and you need to learn different ways to say something briefly but creatively. So I have written many poems and studied poetry when I was in school. So I look at copywriting for app design a lot like poetry sometimes. So I try and be cheeky and fun with it, and sometimes I just am straightforward with it. So does that answer your question?
What was the question?
How do you balance brevity with your tone or your voice so that you just don't end up sounding too dry?
Like a lawyer. No.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is not.
Yeah, what's that? Right? Haikus for the Apple Watch. Right.
We have time for one more question. Who will it be?
About way in the back.
Wait,
Wait.
actually.
Wait, who? The one seated. Whoa, who did you want to pick?
Her.
Wait,
And her.
let's Rochambeau.
Both of them.
Both of them.
Yeah.
Okay,
Ladies,
Andy.
stand up.
Well, and so I am both, but I am neither. I mean, I am not usually the user of the app that I'm working on. So I use my own personality to be creative, like, to be poetic and be creative and look and see if that's going to fit the tone of the app and the user. So you might need to, consult a professional who is a copywriter. Something else. So repeat your question again. So what is the first step to cleaning your copywriting deck? You need to go to your developers and say, please give me all your copy. So they need to export all of that for you into some kind of text file. If they don't already have it in some kind of content management system. So the way that I got involved in this is because, through testing the app and understanding how it works, I kept running into these really awful, horrible written sentences, and some of them are just grammatically incorrect and weird capitalization, and I'm like, you guys, this is just wrong. And so when you see the egregious errors, then you can start digging into the fine-tuning of it. So.
Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you.
That was really,
Thank
really
you.